So welcome back, everyone. I'm once again sitting down with Bruce Ecker, who co-develops Coherence therapy. This is part of a series on coherence therapy, a five-part series. And, in the other videos, we've, described coherence therapy. In the last one, I gave an example of what the clinical work looks like. And I've touched on memory reconsolidation. In fact, I offered for people to go watch my video on memory reconsolidation. And Bruce Ecker is the person that really brought my awareness toward memory reconsolidation as being giving us a lens and insight into how to more reliably produce transformational change in therapy. And in fact, he not only served that role for me, but for our field. He was one of the forefront people to really delve into the science of memory reconsolidation and begin thinking about what it can teach us in terms of how to produce more reliable results with our clients and deeper results. So I asked him if he'd sit down with us for 20 minutes or so to talk about using memory reconsolidation in therapy, which he calls the therapeutic reconsolidation process. I'll let Bruce describe that, TRP, not only for in terms of how it explains why coherence therapy is so effective, but also for another mission I've seen Bruce be on, which is giving us, all of us therapists from various modalities and theoretical backgrounds, some common understanding of what is happening so that we can integrate more seamlessly, understand each other from various camps. So I'm setting Bruce up for that. I promise I'll stop talking and let Bruce do most of the talking, but that is hopefully the topic we'll be exploring together today. So Bruce, I'll let you take it from there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Tori. Well, let's see. It was 2005 when I arrived at thinking that this process of transformational change that we arrived at through studying our own clients when they had major breakthroughs, as I described in our previous interview in this series. We studied our own cases until we saw the well-defined sequence of experiences or set of experiences that always are there just before a major breakthrough, a transformational change occurs, where the client's major longstanding problem or symptom pattern disappears, and also in the underlying distressed schema or version of reality or core beliefs also are fully depotentiated, no longer feel real at all. So we had identified that set of experiences, basically the creation of the juxtaposition experience for the client, in which the client is experiencing the underlying schema or core beliefs bodily, affectively, as well as cognitively, and is also experiencing their own unmistakable knowing or perception or experience that contradicts the reality and disconfirms the reality of that schema or those core beliefs. That juxtaposition, both at once, is the key. And by 2005, we had gotten the knack of organizing therapy toward heading for that from the first session. And so we were getting transformational change pretty reliably. And that, what's more fulfilling for a therapist than to create that level of change for clients? It's wonderful. And so we were happy with our work. And wanting to, share the good news about how there's a well-defined way to do that. Thanks to a young protege who was very interested in neuroscience, I began to wonder whether the neuroscience world had discovered something that corresponds to this process. Because it's such a well-defined process, and it creates such a distinct, remarkable effect that this must exist in the brain. This isn't a made up thing where we've learned to use a process of change that the brain possesses. That was clear, but no idea what that was, what the neuroscience was. But maybe the neuroscientists have found something that corresponds to this. So we began a search, an ongoing search through the neuroscience research literature, and really went through hundreds of different studies and articles, and nothing matched, nothing matched this process that we understood until a wonderful night in November of 2005, when Laurel Hulley and I were on vacation together. We're also a married couple. So we were on vacation in a motel down in San Luis Obispo, California. And I just couldn't stop looking at the computer to search for the neuroscience for this thing. So we had come home from a long day at Hearst Castle, which is amazing, with an amazing history. And late at night, I was again looking through the computer and didn't find it, and got in bed and falling asleep. And something in me said, wait a minute, go back to the computer, go back to the computer. Really, it just woke me up, pulled me out of bed, went back to the computer, looked through the articles I had looked through a couple hours earlier in the hotel room. And there it was, unmistakable. Found it, an article that was published just a year earlier, the title of which was Mismatch Between What is Expected and What is Experienced. Triggers either memory reconsolidation or extinction. Mismatch. That you can see the juxtaposition is a mismatch. I started reading the article, and absolutely this was it. This was the same thing. And this article was the first article in the memory reconsolidation research field to identify the behavioral process, the experiential process that triggers the memory reconsolidation process in the brain. Well, so, okay, then I began studying memory reconsolidation research, of which there was not much at that point, because the initial discovery of the mechanism happened in 2000 was the article that really made neuroscientists take this seriously. There were several articles from 1997 to 2000. And so it was still very recent, just maybe a dozen different research studies on it at that point. But this one was the breakthrough on the behavioral or experiential process that gets the brain to do this. And at this point, at the present, what is this, 2023, there are thousands and thousands of memory reconsolidation research and studies. It's a huge field. See, memory reconsolidation is a very broad, versatile mechanism. It's an analogy is to say, imagine understanding electricity when electricity was first discovered, and it's, what is this strange thing, right? Well, if you said electricity is something that lets you heat up a room, well, that's not what electricity is. That's one of its thousands of possible applications or forms of instantiation. Memory reconsolidation is like that. Memory reconsolidation is the brain's mechanism for making a locked, stable piece of learning of any kind open up, get unlocked, and get modified. Modified in any way. It could be strengthened, weakened, details changed, some other piece of learning, grafted onto it. And so it's a very broad mechanism. There's one particular process that creates transformational change of emotional learnings. And it's the process of creating that juxtaposition where you activate the target emotional learning and co-activate a contradictory knowledge, not just some tweak of some kind, but a contradictory knowing. And at this point, in the present, as we talk, there are over 20 successful studies by neuroscientists showing the full depotentiation, the full unlearning, the potent unlearning of an emotional response, an acquired emotional response in human subjects. So this is now very well established empirically. And in every one of those 20 plus studies, even though the details of procedure vary widely, the concrete details, the same set of experiences is present in every one. And I have a 2021 review article that I've put online that reviews all those studies in detail to show that the same set of experiences. You might wonder, how can it be the same experiences if the procedures vary? Well, think of it this way. Imagine the range of different procedures that could create the experience of laughing in a human subject, right? Same distinct experience, unmistakable when it happens. You could arrange for that to happen in dozens of different ways. But let me count the ways. And so the memory reconsolidation research is the same, these 20 plus successful studies. You can see the same series of experiences, and point for point, they are the same experiences we defined and began to use and defined a coherence therapy to consist of. What's beautiful now that we have the rigorous empirical neuroscience showing that those are the experiences that do this. Now it's not about coherence therapy. Now it's about a unifying framework. Therapists who use any methods, any systems, if they understand that this set of experiences is what creates the breakthrough, the transformational change to happen, then therapists can shape their use of their preferred methods or systems to create this set of experiences. And it also gives therapists who use very different systems a common map, a shared map. They can understand each other's systems as an alternate way to create these experiences. And it's also very integrative for one therapist. I mean, I used to feel very disoriented when in mid-session I would change from one system to another, right? Like, for example, I start to realize with a certain client because of their material or their processing style, I think I want to try doing something in an AEDP manner, right? Or a somatic experiencing manner, or an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming manner, because that'll fit this material and this processing style better. But to make that switch would feel jarring and discontinuous, disorienting for me, maybe upsetting to the client. But now I'm based in this core process of memory reconsolidation. And when I switch to a different, from that point of view, from that position, the different modalities or systems of therapy that I'm familiar with look to me like just different alternative options for facilitating the same experience. So there's continuity for me. It's seamless when I switch to a different type of method from a different system in order to optimally carry out that one process. We named the process the therapeutic reconsolidation process when we talk about it as an application of neuroscience. It turns out coherence therapy's methodology is exactly that, but to talk about it in this unified manner for the therapy field, it's the therapeutic reconsolidation process. Well, that's a long-winded answer to your question, Tori. How are we?
No,
how's
it's
that?
I'm so appreciating what you're saying, and I resonate with it as someone who's trained in a number of different experiential modalities. That when I'm sitting with someone, if let's say they had a trauma where there was more physical, a car accident or an attack or something, then it's pretty seamless for me to move into my somatic experiencing training, but it's still within the overarching aim or mission of activating some kind of implicit knowing. And with physical traumas, that might be I'm stuck, I'm frozen, I can't fight back, you know, and then just using some of the somatic experiencing techniques, like we're going to push. Do you want to push against this pillow and feel your activation and help you become less frozen so you can feel your fight response? That is a disconfirmation. So I'm still thinking, I haven't stopped doing a coherence therapy session, even though we just looked at that, or whatever you want to call the therapy session, if it's just therapy. But if you looked at that moment, it would look like I'm doing somatic experiencing, and I am using those techniques. But it's almost,
you're using the somatic experience techniques to bring about this specific set of experiences.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. That gives a grounding and orientation, so that then the different techniques that I've picked up from different therapies it's more like a menu of options, you know, that it's like, oh, which one's going to fit? And for this particular, like with it, like I'm also an AEDP therapist. So, oh, with an attachment piece, can I use myself right here to be the disconfirmation? It fits the moment. It fits with this client. It fits our relationship. And maybe in some other moment, it doesn't fit so well because maybe there's a behavioral piece and they're wondering, why do I procrastinate? You know, there's a specific thing, and okay, I'm going to put my coherence hat on and do something that looks more like traditional coherence therapy. But again, it's all with TRP, therapeutic reconsolidation, sort of in mind. And so I'm just echoing what you're saying in terms of my own experience learning your work and how to I do just want to add, I hope everyone does read your book, the latest book of you and your colleagues wrote, Unlocking the Emotional Brain. In chapter 6, well, can you speak to chapter 6?
Yes. Chapter 6 is where we closely study previously published case examples, not published by us, published by the therapist, of an AEDP case example, an emotion-focused therapy case example, Leslie Greenberg, an EMDR case example, and an interpersonal neurobiology case example. And we didn't cherry pick these case examples. We simply looked for the first one that definitely shows transformational change resulting long-term, that holds, and is a fine-grained account of the sessions. That's all we look for. As soon as we've got that, that's the case example. It's not cherry-picked to have the key experiences in it ahead of time. I hope you can take my word for that. But we show where in each therapeutic process this specific set of experiences happens. And it's right there, it's right there, they're right there. So it's not a theoretical assertion that the same core process is carried out whenever transformational change shows up. We actually show it very concretely. And because the experiences are distinctive, it's rather unambiguous that in any therapy session, whatever methods or systems were used, if transformational change began to happen, in other words, the client is starting to report that a major symptom or reactivation pattern just isn't happening anymore in the circumstances where it used to happen, that shortly before the client begins reporting that, you can find that the crucial set of experiences actually happened in the therapy sessions. So we showed that for those 4 systems, and we're now working, and actually that has already expanded in other places than in that book, chapter 6. In other publications, we have colleagues who have expanded the set of systems that we've shown this for significantly. And on our website is a page where it lists all of them. Now, I think there are 10 or 11 now, and there's more coming. Trust me, you'll be hearing about that. We're going to add somatic experiencing. We're going to add internal family systems. Oh, what else? Come on, brain.
Child with working with children in therapy. I know you had an example of that.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of this is expanding strongly soon. So, well, there it is. Yeah, it's a very unifying framework.
Well, again, I'm noticing the time and noticing that I could talk with you about this for another half hour or longer. But I think we've captured it. And I just want to say how inspired I am. Often when the lead trainer of a model is teaching, there can be a feeling of this is the correct model, or this is the best model, or, and what I really appreciate about what you're providing here with these thoughts and reflections and really continuing to ground yourself in the science is, while coherence therapy certainly follows along with that science, perhaps most clearly and intentionally in some sense, that really the passion I always see from you isn't this therapy I helped create so wonderful, but also isn't this understanding of how the human mind has an innate process of change. And
Yes.
isn't that amazing? And can't we now all talk with each other and come around the fire in a way and say, well, this is how I've learned to do it. This is how I've learned to do it. I've really understood the somatic aspect of this. I've understood the relationship with the therapist aspect of this. I've looked at this through parts work. And I really love the invitation that you give for us to.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, the therapy field has fragmented so severely, and the competition between different systems is such a symptom of that fragmentation. We need unification, but rigorous unification so badly, and I think this could be it. That's why I'm so excited about it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I hope everyone's enjoyed the chances to learn and to also be with Bruce. So Bruce, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Tori. Thank you. A pleasure.
Welcome, friend, come inside.
Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying my content and would like to support my efforts to make videos on a more regular basis, I'm excited to announce that I just created a Patreon page, which I will link to below. I'm always learning more than I have time to make polished videos about, so by becoming a patron, you will have access to more informal content, including deep dives into specific topics, as well as more personal reflections. Patrons will also have the chance to join smaller study groups where we can connect and discuss what we've been learning together. If you'd like to be part of our community, please check out my Patreon page. And of course, it always means a lot when you guys are willing to share my videos or subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate y'all's support, so thank you.